Good morning. So I'm going to show you today how to measure and create the brows that you want. So I've got some bits and pieces in front of me here that I'm going to show you that we can use to do that. Okay, so what you need is something like a brow pencil. If you've got a brow pencil that you use at the moment just for actually doing your eyebrows anyway, then that's as good as anything to use for your marking. The other thing that you could do if you don't want to use a pencil is you could use a piece of threading string here, and that's quite handy because you can actually use that quite accurately to find where you want to start your eyebrows from. The other thing that you can do with this is you can actually use a little bit of colour or pigment on the string, and then when you measure and you do this, it will leave a little mark. So that's something that can be done as well if that's what you want to do. So this is a little thing of pigment here, and obviously what I can do then with that is pop a little bit onto the string, rub it on, and it's not going to leave a permanent mark on me then, and I can just do that where I want my marks to be. Okay, so how do we get the perfect brow? It's quite a difficult one to explain like this. I'm much better at doing it completely in front of you, but obviously I'm going to try and do it my best on here. So what I would do is start by looking at the existing brow shape and seeing what you want to change with that person's brows. So when they're sitting in front of you, you want to look at them and you want to try and determine where the brow wants to start, end, and where you want your arch. Obviously some people don't have a natural arch, some people have a straight line, and that's part of what you're going to be discussing with them during your consultation. So your client comes in, you do a consultation and you ask them what do they want to achieve, and then you need to figure out whether that's actually going to be possible to do that. Okay, so it's handy to have one of these little wands, and then you can brush your eyebrows like so. So I usually just brush the eyebrows slightly upwards so I can determine what shape the natural brow is going to be. So just brush them out of the way. Then what I'll do is, as I say, I either use a piece of string like this, a piece of threading string, or I can use something like a pencil, and I'm going to look to see where I'm going to line up. So we're going to go on the outer side of the nose, through the beginning of the eye here, and line it up to see, and then we're going to pop a mark there. So if I do mine, it's going to be around about there, and if I do it on this one, it's going to be around about there. So as you can see, I've just popped some pencil marks on there. Now we want to determine where we're going to end the brow shape. So again, you can either use your string, put it on the side of your nose, through the side like that, edge of the nose, edge of the eye, and then come straight up and make a mark. So with using the string method, it can actually leave a slight indentation on there. So if I line it up on the side of my nose, edge of my eye, and then pull like that, it will leave a slight mark, so I can then put my pencil mark on there if I'm not doing it the other way, which is pencil, side of eye, like that. Okay, then we want to see where we want to have our arch shape. Obviously determining with your client if they actually want to have an arch or whether they're wanting them a little bit more straight. So what I would do then, again, either with the pencil or the string, line it up with the edge of your nose here, and then come right through the edge of the pupil to the outer edge, just looking, getting the client to look straight ahead, and then you can see where your little brow arch should be. So the same on the other side. And then you've got your basic marks for your brow shape. Now you can go into this in a lot more detail if you're doing something a little bit more intense than just a basic brow shape. If you're going to be doing something along the lines of microblading eyebrows, then it's a slightly different way of measuring. But this is the basics. This is the very beginning of how to do this. If you want to be even more accurate, what you can do is take a center line. So you come down through the nose, the middle of the lip, and the middle of the chin, and you can determine where the center is. And then what you can do is actually mark that, and then you can measure the distance between the center and the beginning, and then make sure it's the same on the other one. Then you can measure the distance between the beginning and the arch, and then again measure that on that side, and then you can do the same between the arch and the end of the brow. So the easiest way to do that is to actually buy a measuring tape, or buy one of the stick-on tapes that you can put across the forehead, and then you can actually work it out from that. So this is just giving you a very basic idea where you're going to start your brows, end your brows, and where your arch is going to be. Okay, so once you've got those 3 points, what we're going to do is draw a line from the beginning to the arch to the end, and the same underneath. Obviously you've got to determine how thick you want that eyebrow to be, and that's what you will have done in your consultation. You will have discussed that with your client to find out, are their brows thick enough, or do they want them a little bit thicker, or do they want them thinner? So I'm just going to show you how I would do that on my brow. So I'm just going to very gently draw it along. And then I'm going to draw to the end. Now obviously I'm using a black marker here, so my eyebrows are looking very black on this demonstration. And if you just do that, you can just sort of see where you want to be keeping the shape, and then where you want to thicken the shape up or where you want to thin the shape. Okay, so what I would do once I've done this, I would actually then show the client, this is the kind of idea of how we want to create your brow shape, and make sure that they're happy with it, and make some adjustments if you need to do. So these are really good, these little micro applicators for adjusting everything. What you can do is pop a tiny bit of eye makeup remover just on the end of there, and then you can just tidy up your shape before you start to do your tinting. Right, so we're ready to tint in between these lines now. So what you would do is mix up your tint, ready to do this. So I've got some brown and I've got some grey. So I usually do a little bit of brown with a bit of grey in when I'm doing mine, because obviously, as you can see, I have got quite grey, naturally grey roots. So I don't want my eyebrows to be an orangey colour. I would rather that they were more of a grey colour than orangey. So because of that, I put a little bit of brown and a little bit of the grey into my dappen dish. Okay, so I'm just going to put a tiny bit of that. And then I'm going to add the drops here of the developer. So this is the developing lotion. So your instructions will tell you how many drops to put on, depending on the product brand that you're using. So I'm just going to mix this up. Now, what you want to do is get it all mixed up and ready to use on your brow area. And what you don't want to do is leave it lying around and pick it up later on and use it, because it's not going to be any good. So you need to mix it and use it straight away. So I'm just mixing up this grey. And then when I'm happy that I've mixed it up, I can apply it onto the brow hairs. So when you've been drawing the outline with somebody with very blonde or light coloured hairs, you can incorporate those tiny, tiny blonde hairs into the outline, because the tint will pick up those little tiny hairs and it will bring them into the shape. So although it might look like they haven't got much there, you can actually incorporate all of that into your brow shape and just tint up those little tiny hairs and see if you can incorporate them and bring them in. So I'm now going to, I've mixed it up, it's a good consistency. I'm now going to put that onto my brow hairs. And I'm just working within the lines that I've put on there. So just carry on putting your tint into those lines. Now I'm just using this little tiny micro applicator, but your tinting kit will come with a brush if you want to use that. So you'll notice that I'm doing this before I've actually waxed or tweezed my eyebrows, because I like to get the tint on first and I can see what I'm working with, what hairs are there. If the person's got incredibly long brow hairs, you might want to just give them a little trim first, but we'll cover that in another video. So that's one brow covered. Put your timer on. The first time you do this, you're not really going to know how long you want this to be on there for. So obviously you need to be timing it, and it's better to time it for just a short period and take it off and reapply than it is to leave it on too long and have them way too dark for your client. So I usually do 2 minutes to start with. Time it for 2 minutes, remove the product, see how the hairs are coming up, and if they're not dark enough for the client, you can pop some more on and time it for another 2 minutes. So you will find that some clients need longer than others. So mine is usually about 4 minutes because I like to have mine quite dark, as you can see. So I'm just popping this tint all the way within my outline. And don't worry too much if you go beyond the outline, because what you can do is get another micro applicator and just tidy up the edges if you need to. But I'm not going to worry too much about it today. Just going to pop it all in and see how it comes up. Okay, so I think I've pretty much covered everything on there. But if I am worried about it, I will just tidy it up with a cotton bud or one of these little micro applicators. So I'll just show you how I can do that. I'll just get a cotton bud. So I'm just going to use a cotton bud just to go around the outline, just to make sure that I haven't gone over my lines that I put on there. If you remember, I'd marked out where I wanted everything. So I'm just going to make sure that I haven't gone over the lines at all. Okay, I think that's it. So my timer's on. I'm going to take this off now and see how the tint looks on here. And like I say, if you're worried, just leave it on for 2 minutes to start with, and then remove the product, and then you can reapply if needs be. So I always mix up enough, so I've got enough just to pop more on. So how do you take off the product? You can use a cotton bud, and what you could do is you could just bend the cotton bud slightly and just remove the product like so. And then you can use a damp cotton pad just to wipe across it. And the same on the other one. And you can just check how it's looking. Okay, so that's that one. Now I'm going to use another cotton bud just to take off this. And if I want them any darker, I can reapply. So if you've got somebody that's got patchy eyebrows, what you can do then is pop some remaining tint in wherever the patches are, because it will actually slightly tint the skin at the same time. My eyebrows are usually quite patchy at the beginning. I think that's where my brow hair is becoming grey. So I usually have to pop a little bit more back on, just in the area where my grey or my white hairs come, because otherwise it doesn't cover it. So I'm just going to pop a bit more on the beginning of the brow. It's always this bit that I have problems with. See how dark it's looking. Now, obviously, when you're doing your client, they'll be lying down or sitting up slightly, so you're not going to have the problem of this falling back into their eye, which it's going to do on me. So just pop the product on like that. Give it another minute or two. I want mine quite dark today, so I'm going to just go back over it, making sure that I've covered all of those hairs again, because I like them quite dark. So this time I put quite a lot of grey in, just see what it's like on me, with a tint, a tiny little bit of brown tint as well. So back on, leave it on for another 2 minutes, tidy up the area if you have slightly gone onto your skin where you don't want it, and just give that another 2 minutes and then remove. So I've removed the tint, and I'm now going to look at trimming my brow hairs. Now, the reason I'm going to trim my brow hairs next is because if you've got quite long brow hairs and you wax, you might catch them, or you might get them stuck in the wax. So I just find it's easier when they're long like mine to trim them. So how I would do that is I would use a little brush and brush them up and just see how long those hairs are. So I've got some really long hairs here. Now, I don't want to cut them too short because I don't want to ruin the shape that's there, but I just want to just nip the ends off like that. So just brush them up and just nip those ends. And the same on this side. Just brush them up, and then just nip the ones that you want nipping. So you don't have to have them right up like that and come right down onto the brush because they're going to be too short. You just want to take a tiny bit off, really. And then what you can do is brush them down the other way. And then if there's any really long ones, you'll see them coming down. You can just nip those off. But like I say, don't go too mad with the trimming, because you'll end up with very, very short hair, which can look, it can look really, you know, really sharp if you do that. But you do, the first few times you do sort of run the danger of just taking too much hair off. I'm just going to do this one now. So I'm just brushing the brow hairs up, and then I'm going to gently nip the ones I can see that are just above that line that you don't want. So there's some really long ones on here, so I'm just going to get those off. Just don't catch your hair at the same time. And again, you can brush back down just to see whether they're incredibly long like mine. So you can see there's some really long hairs coming down there. So I'm just going to nip those edges off those. Again, don't take too much. So this can be done for males and females, because obviously guys quite often have quite, or can have quite bushy eyebrows, so you can do exactly the same. Just brush them up, nip off those ends that are a little bit long, and then if you're not sure if you've done it all, brush them back down again. I can see a couple there that are just a little bit long, so let's just do that again. I'm using an actual brow comb now because I just dropped the little wand I had. So brush them back up again, and hopefully now you can see that the shape's a little better of the brows. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to wax or tweeze the remaining hairs around the brows. So for the purposes of this one, I'm going to show you how I would wax. I'm just going to turn the camera off again and go and get the wax. Okay, so I've got some pre-wax spray that I've just sprayed onto a piece of damp cotton wool. I'm just going to wipe over that area that I'm going to be waxing. Don't forget the middle. And then once you've done that, you need to just dry that area with a tissue. Before you start your waxing. So I use a very, very thin waxing spatula, and I'm going to start removing the hairs here that are just outside of the original lines that I did. So you want your wax to be warm enough, but not too hot. So always check your temperature of the wax on your wrist before you start. So we're putting the wax is going upwards I'm going to pop the strip on, and then we're going to pull downwards in the opposite direction, keeping the skin firm. So same thing, I'm going to put the edge of my wax strip right against the edge of where I want to remove the wax, and then pull. And the same on that side. So I'm not going right over my eyebrow, I'm just holding the strip. Okay, now I'm going to wax underneath the eyebrow. So take a small amount of wax on your spatula, keep the skin taut, and just put the wax on outside of the line that you'd previously done, which has now been tinted. Keeping fairly firm, put the edge of the wax strip against the brow, with the point into the arch. Keep the brow taut and pull off the opposite way. And then you're going to do from the beginning to here. It's easier to start this way. So place the wax along where you want it. As thin as possible and not going over where you've already done. Take the strip, place the firm straight edge against the brow, pressing firmly on and then pulling across the opposite way. And I find when you're new to waxing, if you keep your strip exactly where you want to have the line, like so, you're not going to go over it and risk pulling out any other hairs that you don't want to do. If you see any remaining wax on there, you can always pop back on and just place a new strip on and pull it off. And any hairs that haven't come out, don't be tempted to re-wax them, because it will make it even redder. And obviously my brows haven't been done for quite a while. That reddening is quite normal. That's what you would expect. What you can do then is put some after wax gel on, which will actually soothe that area. So there's no bruising and there's nothing left. I'm just removing those tiny bits that are left on there. You'll see a shiny area. So now I'm going to do the top. So again, just take a very, very tiny wax spatula, or you can use an orange stick. And I'm going to go across the top in a very thin line, making sure that I'm not going onto the brow hair that I don't want to remove. Take the edge of the wax strip and I'm going to do that section first. So I'm going to just press it firmly on in the direction that the hairs grow. Take the end, support the skin and off. Fresh strip, make it straight, hold the skin, stretch and remove. And if there is a bit of residue on there, take a fresh strip just to tidy that up. And if there's anything that is not been removed by the waxing, you can then tweeze the odd hair that's left. I'm going to do the other eyebrow and then I'm going to show you how we just finish off. Just going to show you that I had a tiny bit of wax left there and I literally just put the corner in and I could remove that tiny hair. So I didn't put new wax on, I just went back on with a new strip and put it on the remaining wax that was still there that I could see, that was shining. If I didn't want to remove that wax with a strip because it had gone over the hair, then I would rub that off with some oil and it wouldn't take away the hair. So there's a tiny bit of wax left there and a tinsy bit there with the hair in, which I don't want to remove. So I'm just going to rub that off now with a bit of after wax oil just to remove that so that I'm not taking that hair away. So what I would do now is just check and then get the tweezers. So we've tinted, we have brushed the hairs up and down and tweezed, we have waxed the area that we want to, and now I'm just going to go in and finish with the tweezers, the odd couple that are still there, and then I'm going to apply some oil over and then I'm going to brush the hair through with some gel, and that will be the end of the defined brows. So I just tweezed a few remaining hairs that were still, there were a couple down here and a couple here, and then what I've done is I put some after wax oil on and I'm just going to brush through. So now we don't have any long ones, and hopefully we don't have any grey ones or white ones, and hopefully the shape fits within what I wanted, and that's it. So have a go and do a before and after photo, and then let me know how you get on.